live. What? Oh.
Woo! What?
There we are. We had a momentary mishap there for a second. And the video is coming up here in a moment, people.
Shortly.
Yeah, you will see
Very
it.
shortly. Well, hello, everybody. This is Testing Normal.
Yeah.
And I'm Curtis.
I'm Jordan.
And this is a podcast where we talk about anything and everything.
Yep. And once again, we are going to prove that tonight. We're going live at a different time.
We're starting new. We usually go for 4 p.m.s, but we're switching it up, doing a little 8 p.m. tonight. We didn't have a whole lot of time earlier in the day, obviously, because it is the day of Easters.
And our guest had some stuff he had to do. So as the people that are watching on video can see, we have someone joining us
Very special
not
guest.
on the special couch.
Coming to us live from the Vegas of Los.
Yep.
And this is Mr. Simon Skold. Hey, Simon.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Doing well. And Simon is a good friend that met, like, I guess 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago, something along those lines.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it was 2008. It was.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, crazy. Long time ago.
Shit,
So basically, Simon and I have been able to hang out and meet up a couple different times throughout the years. He came and visited my wife and I when we were in Astoria. And, we've just kind of stayed connected. But Simon is a very special guest for many reasons, but one in particular is he has had some experience living in the Middle East and specifically living in Palestine.
That's awesome. Which neither of us have.
And majority of the people that we know have not either.
Right.
And yep, look at that shirt. Classic. It says I Heart Palestine. Love it.
This is also, by the way, this kufiya is from Palestine. That's why I have it.
Okay.
This was made in one of the last remaining factories that actually make it there in Palestine. So I got a kufiya from there, which is exciting.
A kufiya.
That is really cool.
Kufiya.
Classy. Looks very cool. So Simon, though, real quick, I want to give him a shout out, guys. He does a lot of things. But one thing that he is, and I am very proud of him for also, he is now kind of headlining a show in Vegas in the Cosmopolitan. And it's called Opium. So if you guys are out and about in Vegas, go check him out. He's the star, up and coming.
Okay, headlining and star are both strong words, so don't get people hooked up. I am learning an act and performing it at the Cosmo at a show called Opium, and it's amazing.
Very, 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 very cool stuff, though.
That's more than we do.
That's far more than any of us do, yeah.
We just pretend to be people on a podcast.
Yeah. We're not real people.
What a performer does is you just pretend to be a person on stage. You're just not...
We're performers.
Yeah.
That's weird.
That's in a way.
Yeah, in a way,
right?
Yeah.
But today, guys, we're going to take things, unfortunately, on a kind of somber note, kind of a bummer note. We want to kind of give some thoughts and prayers out to the people in Sri Lanka. They had a pretty terrible attack on their country where it's estimated over 200 people have died and hundreds more injured through multiple bombings. And it looks like it's kind of a religious-based attack. It looks like it was mostly Christian and other religions in that area that were attacked.
Yeah, super sad.
And it was in multiple locations. I think I already said that.
Yeah, I think it was like 8 or 10 the last time I heard.
8 or 10 bombings
this morning, yeah.
And from what I've seen also, there's about 13 people on CNN. I was looking it up. There's around 13 people that have currently been arrested or in custody right now.
Wow.
But it's basically it caused the entire country to go on lockdown. This is off CNN. They were talking about it. A country, and they have 21 million people in that country. Apparently it's kind of interesting. There was like an intelligence memo that had gone out of a possible attack that was kind of circulating around the Sri Lankan, I guess that's how you'd say it, government, about like there was a serious attack about to go down, but they couldn't like know where or when or exact information about it.
Wow. Really? I didn't hear that.
Yeah. So there was someone, I think it was a British intelligence agency.
Wow.
Yeah, an intelligence agency memo is what it says. This is on, we'll post this link. Kind of gave a little tip that it was going to go down, but they weren't able to actually isolate who or where or when it was going to happen specifically. So yeah, super, super bummer stuff. So, but that kind of ties into what we wanted to talk about tonight a little bit. We want to go into a little bit of the history and the current conflict going on in Palestine and Israel, and kind of we like to have guests on that have different perspectives.
Right. And
Simon is one that would have a great perspective as far as what it looks like for the Palestinian people, since he lived there obviously for over a year. And yeah, kind of go into those details and see how that conflict affected Simon and his views were, and kind of go into that. So before we do, Simon, do you have any thoughts you want to say before we go into that?
I mean, yeah, I have lots of thoughts, but no, I think we could just jump right in. Yeah, I don't know where you want to start.
Well, I think I'd kind of like to start on history a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know, Jordan, you know much history about this whole conflict?
No, I do not, but I'm excited.
Yeah.
Well, I've got an idea since you asked me. How about this? So for the listeners, let me give like a brief story about why I was there and what I did.
Yeah,
give
absolutely.
Some context from my experience, and then we can jump into history and moving
Totally.
and this stuff. So I'll keep it the sort of Reader's Digest, but so there's context. This was in 2012. I actually had visited the country as a tourist earlier with a few of my friends, and we spent a lot of time in the state of Israel and a little bit of time in places like Bethlehem, which is inside the West Bank, and Ariha, which is the historical location of Jericho. So when I was in the West Bank, I just felt this excitement for the culture and a curiosity. I found it quite beautiful, and I enjoyed it so much. And so then I decided to look for a way to get back, and I found an institution where I could teach English. It was like an after-school program, sort of. And so I went there, and I lived there and taught English for just under a year, and then came back, and life sort of changed. But that's what I was doing there. So I lived there, and I celebrated holidays with them and funerals, and got to really experience what the life was like day to day for Palestinian, which is the reason I wanted to go. And I was in a place called Khalil, which in English we say Hebron, and or Hebron. That's
the West Bank, correct?
Yeah, in the West Bank.
Okay.
And a very a hot spot for conflict in the past and in the present, because it's actually the burial location of Abraham, the father of all three of the major monotheistic religions. So he's buried there. One of his sons is buried there. His wife, his daughter-in-law. There's a few people there, but Abraham and Isaac and Ishmael, really important characters in the story of the conflict, kind of the origin even. So there's a settlement right there in Khalil. And that settlement is very close. Settlement is an Israeli settlement, so this is space that Israel uses and lives in, Israeli citizens. And it's usually a settlement has a lot of security because it's inside the West Bank or butting up against the West Bank. And so there's a lot of security, so it can be a tense location. But so that's where we live. And that was just a little bit south of Bethlehem, which is a little bit south of Jerusalem, which is kind of in the center of the country.
Gotcha. Nice. Yes.
So that's the basic.
Yeah.
Some context.
Awesome. Here, will you finish that for me, Jordan?
Yep.
So the history a little bit here of the Palestine-Israeli conflict goes back thousands of years. It
goes back to Abraham,
right?
Isaac, and Ishmael.
Yeah, like you mentioned. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
But we want to kind of.
It's funny because Curtis and I were talking about that beforehand, and I was like, "There is some history there," and he goes, "Yeah, well,
it's too far back.
It's a little complicated." And then you did a really good job going there, better than we could have. So
yeah.
Awesome.
So well done. But I'm going to kind of go into more detail as far as like going back to probably around 60 AD, where the Jewish people had been living in that area under the rule of the Roman Empire. And around 60 AD, around there, within plus 10 or so decades, the Jewish people had a revolt and were trying to uphold, but basically try to take over the surrounding area and say this is our territory. So the Roman squashed that revolt, and most of the Jewish population at that time left the area. And then around 600 AD, the Roman Empire was taken over by a Muslim caliphate, or basically Muslim group, and they then allowed actually Jewish people to come back into the area and worship in the area where they found to be holy also. And then going further forward, around 1100 AD, the Crusades took place and basically kicked out a bunch of Muslims, and then the Jewish people were still kind of in the area, and then but not as many as were there when the Roman Empire were. And then obviously shooting forward even farther, and there's a lot of details that we're skipping over here, right, but trying to just kind of give like people a broad scope, because there's a lot of things that most people don't understand about this conflict or this history, and so we're just kind of doing very broad, super broad,
and it's super complex too.
You have to do broad strokes.
Yeah, very, very broad strokes. And obviously people are going to be listening to us and say, you're missing a lot of shit and you're saying this very wrong. But we're trying to help start somewhere. So
yeah,
we're just talking.
We start conversations here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, like, moral of the story, the land's been fought over forever.
Yeah.
So
the land's been fought over forever.
For a long time.
And in the 1940s, Britain was actually had colonized that area. Right. And they were around after World War II, they were talking about leaving that colonized area and giving it back to the surrounding people. But also, coincidentally, they were also trying to find a place to provide Jewish people, especially Jewish people from Europe, a place to live. And they then gave the United Nations and Britain, which basically had most of the say because they were the ones that had occupied that territory, a portion of this place where we now call Israel. But what happened is the people that lived there, the Jewish people and the Palestinian people, who were mostly Arabic, were both kind of prepping for this battle that was going to take place once the British left the territory. So as soon as the British left the territory, there was a huge battle that took place, and it was I think it was 5 countries. Is that correct? Let me double check here. Let me pull it up. It was 5 countries or 6 countries that then fought against Israel, and that then led to Israel taking possession of more land than what they had originally been sanctioned or given by the United Nations and Britain in some ways. And then since that time, the Palestinian people and the Jewish people have been fighting back and forth over this territory. And then there was other wars, 1960s, where Egypt and, was it Syria, I think, and maybe Libya, I can't remember, maybe not Libya. Who's just east of Israel? What country is that?
Just east, yeah, Jordan.
Jordan. Yeah,
Syria
and Jordan.
is above Jordan. Yeah.
It's me.
Yeah, hey, Jordan. Hey, man. Anyways, those countries had tried to invade Israel again. Yes, Israel also pushed back again, and then took control of the Gaza Strip and took control of the West Bank, and then have since that time actually relinquished the Gaza Strip control, but they still have a significant amount of. They have sanctions. They still control who comes in and goes out of the Gaza Strip, but also they have even more control over the West Bank. Essentially, like they colonized it / they're integrated into the West Bank, even though it's not their territory technically, according to United Nations, I think. So, Simon, tell us what you think about all that. Is that accurate? Does that sound accurate to what your history knowledge is?
Yeah, it does. And I want to say for sure, just now, especially for the people that are listening, I'm not on the of colonialism, which has its own problems and issues.
Right.
Like, no, you can't just colonize another person. We're past that now, but back then they had actually colonized land and then just gave it away.
Right.
And had no which has no regard for the people that have been living there for generations and generations. Doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
Just because Britain colonized it doesn't mean it was up for grabs.
Right. Yeah. I can't fathom the concept of living in a land, owning a house, owning a territory, and then another nation that wasn't originally from there is then saying you actually get to own this.
Yeah,
you get to own my house now. Someone else gets to own my house or my land.
The thing is, you do. You would still own it, but you would know that overall or overarching, you can't do much with it. And that land is important. But think about this. Think about growing up in a country the size of New Jersey, and you want to work in the medical field, a nurse practitioner or a doctor, and you want to, and you go to school and you learn all of that stuff, or you have to go to school to learn all that stuff. But you're growing up in a world and a life that says it's going to be really difficult, if not impossible, to reach that dream, not because of lack of hard work or ability, but because you can't get out of the country.
Right.
And only if people do. And forget it if your family is linked to anything negative that has happened in the past. It's like you're stuck. You're done. You're going to end up working at your father's restaurant or dress shop or hookah lounge or wherever, and could be the world's next best doctor.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, the concept of this land that these people originally had ownership of, and whatever that means. Even the concept of owning land is kind of a funny thing. But
true.
But these people had history there, had families there, and then another population came in, moved in, said, now we own this land or this territory.
And at first, when these people came in, it was maybe there was a lot of more peace, more acceptance. Like, oh yeah, okay, sure, move in over there, or like do that, whatever. But it's been a very intense and continued collection of land.
Yeah. Right.
So they didn't necessarily come in and say you have to move 100 miles west or south, or you have to go to Jordan or whatever. They just kind of moved in, but they slowly just pushed.
You're saying that the Israeli or the Israeli population has, right? Or the Jewish population. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's say Israeli.
Okay. Yeah.
So two are not the same always.
Right. Because Jewish would be more religious / ethnicity, and Israeli would be more of the country proper. Yeah. Okay. So, with your experiences there, you lived in the West Bank. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So you lived in the West Bank as a U.S. citizen. Was that something that you felt like you had extraordinary amount of privileges being able to move in and out of that area, or was it something that you still felt like this is significantly was it still very strenuous and very difficult for you to get in and out of that occupied territory?
Yes to both. The privilege of, it's what I was just sort of talking about, the privilege of just the knowledge that as an 8-year-old, for instance, that someday you can go anywhere you want and do anything you want. That's a powerful message to be raised with. That's powerful. And to not have that, I think, is equally powerful, but with a different outcome. So I felt the privilege of being able to come and go as I please. And that was even bigger than just going to Jerusalem and crossing the border. That means going to America, coming back home. Or I could get on a plane and go to China if I wanted to, right?
So
no one's saying no, but crossing the border is never easy. No.
Yeah. So if someone lives in Gaza or lives in the West Bank and they're Palestinian, they're born in Palestine or the West Bank or Gaza, I guess, are they both called Palestine? If you're living in Gaza, would you say I'm Palestine?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I've said Palestine to people before, and especially Israelis. Not to generalize, but I've met some Israelis and I've been like, they're like, where? I was like, I lived in that part of the world. They'll say, where? I said, well, in Palestine. They get mad at me for even saying Palestine, and they get, oh, you're one of those, and they get really aggressive about it because to them, Palestine doesn't exist. It was like in 2012, I think, when the UN finally even recognized Palestine as sort of a state.
So people don't know. For people who don't understand, and you're not dumb if you don't understand, because I honestly wasn't clear on this beforehand.
I don't understand all of this. Oh my gosh,
yeah. I definitely was very ignorant to a lot of this. But the Gaza basically is on the western side of Israel, and it's right next to the Mediterranean. And then the West Bank is on the east side of Israel, and it's separated and divided by Israel proper. Right. And the West Bank is right next to the Jordan River.
Right. So the occupying state of Israel, the border is the Jordan River and the Mediterranean. The Gaza Strip doesn't cover all of the Mediterranean. It's just like the corner that touches the Sinai Peninsula.
Right.
So it's a little like Oklahoma-looking shaped, like a cleaver section of land up against Egypt and the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
And then the West Bank is like a backwards B that's up against the Jordan River.
Okay.
Yeah. So it doesn't cover. There is Israel-Jordan borders.
Right. Yeah. So when you made friends with Palestinians in the West Bank, did you have like communications with them? If you guys wanted to leave the West Bank, you're like, hey dude, let's go on an adventure together to somewhere outside of this territory. Were they able to leave or what do you recall, or do you have a understanding of what it looked like for them to leave that area?
I do not know the process, but I do know it's long and it's arduous to get a passport that allows you to leave to cross through a checkpoint. And it's not easy. It is not easy at all. I know a lot of people that have been arrested several times because they sneak over somewhere. They get past the border and to go find work.
Oh, okay.
And to work as much as they can, like at a construction site, and get paid, and then they basically work until they get caught, and then they get thrown in jail and kicked out.
So
that's rough.
Does any of this conversation make you think a little bit about applying it to our country and south of the border? Yes,
and I also I've thought about this a lot when it comes to like Simon's computer connection's going, but like traveling between our states, like that we have so much freedom that if I want to just pick up and drive across the country tomorrow, I can.
Yeah. I guess
crazy.
This would. This is we have a little bit of the inverse situation in the way of like the Palestinian people are not allowed to leave their territory they're not allowed to leave their territory, but the Israeli country is expanding and building new residents in the Palestinian territory.
Yeah,
and the United States is not trying necessarily to build more territory outside into Mexico, but their population is trying to live and come to our
It is a bit weird because when it's come up about like, Trump's wall and all that kind of stuff, I got on this like really big bender of like going on Google Earth and like flying as close as I could to our border just to see what the Mexico border looked like. And it is freaking wild. Like I didn't realize like just how close some of the things are. And I guess I didn't even have that perspective. So I don't even understand what you're talking. Like I don't have that experience. So it's hard to even fathom what that feels like or looks like or.
Well, what, crossing a border?
Well, not like crossing a border, but like just the conflict that you're even explaining of people doing that as a way of life. Like they're still people, regardless of what you think of either side or if you pick a side or whatever, there's still human beings there that are living in that. And it's just, we have so many freedoms. Like I knew that it would only take me a few minutes to get to Curtis's house, and not everyone has luxury.
Totally.
That is, that's a for sure a huge point and something that I saw firsthand. And it was always easier for me to get through even just a border like crossing, like to get to the tomb of the patriarchs, as it's called, where Abraham, you had to go through security checkpoint because of its proximity to this settlement. Side note, in the 90s, someone like shot up the tomb of the patriarchs. It was a place where both Israelis and Palestinians could go, and and you could just walk around and see it. In like the 90s, someone shot the whole place up, and now it's split, and more conflict and more security, but it's split. And the person who shot it up was a Jewish Zionist from, I think, the States. And it's just interesting.
Just trying to cause separation.
Interesting that a Jewish Israeli Zionist from America comes and shoots up a place, and they are relegated to half of it. Can you imagine what would happen had an Arab or a Muslim man shot up the place? They would have no access to it. Shows you kind of just the.
Yeah. But it was in Israeli control at that time, right? That area.
Yeah, all the settlements are all Israeli controlled. They're basically these little community pods that are spread very purposefully, shall I say, very strategically, and they just kind of grow in little pods and expand. And
did you see those? Did you see those areas expanding? Like when you were there, did you see actual like developments that were under construction expanding into the West Bank?
Gosh, I guess the answer to that is no. I've seen like the no man's land between a settlement and Khalil. I was at someone's house having dinner, and you could see the darkness of no man's land between the two.
Okay.
But you hear the stories of land that used to be somebody's or whatever and is no longer.
Do those people get reparations? Like if I don't know, do you know if like people that had you heard about people in Palestine like getting money for land that the Israelis
for their land? Yeah. I don't know. It's a great question. I don't actually know if that's true. I never heard that it was.
Yeah, that
a wild ass guess would be probably not.
Probably.
I'm gonna guess no.
Yeah.
They also there's another thing that's limited are the roads that you can travel on. Like Jordan, you mentioned you knew it was going to take you like 7 minutes to get to work, and I went to work one time with a young man, a good friend of mine, very sweet, and for work he drove a delivery truck. I forget what was being delivered, but drove from where we were all the way north to a place called Nablus, which is north of Jerusalem, and it's not that far away really when you think about it. Probably in the States it would take an hour and a half to get there, or 2 hours maybe. But this man, because he's Palestinian, works for a Palestinian company, all that, he can't take the main roads. He can't get onto these main highways that let you go through and straight shot to where you're going. So it's a lot of all these surface streets, driving around, taking the really long way to go around this settlement because you can't just cut through it, and it's like a strip of settlement. So you have to go all the way around it. You're still subject to, we got stopped, we got searched. They were very confused why American was in his car. And
I can imagine that would be confusing.
And so it just is interesting. It took like 7 hours to get there, you know? So it's an interesting experience. It's like, okay, for work, I'd have to drive 7 hours all the way around, all this blah, 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 blah. And maybe I won't make it because they'll pull me over, they'll stop me, and they won't suspect, or they'll suspect me or something. Or they'll find something that they don't like.
So I'm going to say something that may be a little bit...
Yes. This is my favorite segment in our podcast.
I'm going to be Curtis saying, I'm going to say something.
So I'm going to say something that may be a little bit provocative. But if you look at history, it seems like things that are done over a short, quick period of time seem to have less of a historical sting than things that are drawn out over hundreds of years. And I'm going to give like the most recent example I would use is like Ukraine or Crimea, how the Russian government came in and invaded the southern border of Ukraine and took Crimea over a period of like maybe was it a couple weeks or was it a month? It was a very, very short period of time. Okay. And the media and it seems like the world kind of got over that like really quick. And I'm not saying I'm a proponent for this, but I'm just kind of surprised like it hasn't already happened. I'm surprised Israel honestly hasn't just totally invaded Palestine and just said this is Israel. This is now Israel territory proper.
It's not that provocative.
It's what?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm surprised. Why wouldn't that have happened?
More provocative than the question, I think.
Okay, yeah. Why would that not have happened? I don't get it.
Because it's possible, and here's the real provocative thing to say: it's quite possible that the Israeli government, the Israeli society is really, really smart and really good at what they do and really super strategic in how they're taking over this land. And they don't mind taking their time. They realize that if they just bombed the shit out of everybody or just bulldozed their houses down, the world would come, Oh, sorry, I swore.
No, you're fine.
No, I was bugging him because he was clicking his microphone and it's like shaking this entire table.
No, it's my bad.
Stop fidgeting.
I swore. I'm sorry. I'll try not to.
No, it's really good.
It's just it seems very strategic the way they build their settlements, the way they take land. They wait for the opportunity to say, hey, you messed up, so now that your land is ours, like they did with the Golan Heights. Like they're very, if Israel's given nothing else, they're very smart. They're very strategic.
Yeah.
And they win. I mean, you can tell from the way you were talking about the conflicts that they keep. I mean, that the fact that they still exist is evidence of their smarts and also our funds, but.
Right. Yeah. Definitely, there's some influence as far as support that Israel has had, obviously.
But that's why I think so, because they wouldn't have won that. They wouldn't have won if they. But the path that they are going on right now,
they wouldn't have won the 1960 war. Is that what you're saying?
Any Palestinians in that land?
The war of 1960s, you were thinking they probably wouldn't have won. Is that what you're saying? Or just the wars in general?
I'm just saying, if they had come in and just pushed everybody out and bulldozed everyone, or if tomorrow they decided
they wouldn't
to
have
that,
the support from.
They would not get anyone's support, and they would be stopped.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
can't take the whole world on.
I wonder too, though, going back to what you would, gone back to like how far back this conflict goes, if that has something to do with it, like because of the history of it, like almost like it's like the never-ending war between these spots.
Sorry, I like that. Yeah, so it seems to me like it's just ripping a Band-Aid off.
Or Israel just really like to war.
Israel is going for this territory, and they want to have a sovereign country within. They, for some reason, value that West Bank territory. But I'm curious, like why the West Bank territory do they value more than expanding into other territories? Is it because they're easier? I guess if they went into obviously Egypt, or if they went into Syria above them, there would be more of a pushback from their military.
Well, yeah, they would start a war. The thing is, the Palestine has been mostly de-armed, and that land belongs to the occupying state of Israel, so they think, right?
Right.
So basically, they're just like, oh no, we're letting them live there. We haven't kicked them off yet. I mean, this is what we did in our country. We can't get into what we did to the native population.
You're right.
Because that's
totally.
That's a whole
very
other
good
thing.
point. Yeah, such a good comparison.
But you can look at what we did to the native population and how we did it, and you can see, I think there's some similarities. At no point was the ruling, I think the majority belief is just like nuke them all or kill them all, just get rid of them. It was like, no, we kind of need their land. They're not as valuable as we are, but like, hey, we'll give you this area. You can have that. You can have that. But then that area kept changing. It kept getting smaller. It kept getting smaller. Now, we're so behind.
Does it seem like the most simple
we'll let
solution?
You have casinos and sell us fireworks.
Well, we'll give you free college. Listen, we'll give them free college.
Yeah.
We're doing, and those are the reparations that we can't, but they can never have their land back. They're never going to have we built cities on top of it, and there are people living there now, and people own that land.
Right.
But it's way too far. We can't do it. So we're trying our best, sort of.
Except for Vegas, where you're at right now. Nobody inhabited that, and that's why it's there.
Right, exactly. It exists strictly because it's unlivable.
Yeah, exactly.
So cops couldn't chase us here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I guess it seems like the most simple answer to this problem.
Well, this is going to be good, guys. Everyone be sitting
down. And I'm
not
not saying this is like good. Obviously, the Palestinian people don't have the power, and they do not have the arms to fight against what they see as an oppressive state. And the Israeli people do. If the Israeli people want this to end, and they don't want to have the threats of the Palestinian people, which it seems like it is the Palestinian population that's shooting the rockets into their country. And
I know, the global myths.
Right. And
the
not that
information that you actually know and think about.
Right.
It's
right.
skewed.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. But I've seen videos of rockets shooting into Israel.
No. I'm not saying it's not happening, but the world, I would say the majority of the world believes Palestine is aggressors, that Israel is nicer than they need to be by even allowing them and not blowing them up.
Right.
and that, that Israel is innocent. This is like, I mean, I believe that for a while, and not the especially the church, the Judeo-Christian upbringing that I had values the Jewish people and the land of Israel so much because we find it so important in the stories we tell, especially the ones that have to do with the future, that we should be the ones that are saying what you're doing is absolutely unchristlike, and yet we are the ones that support Israel the most, and we keep telling these stories.
Well,
and these things, we keep painting this picture of Palestine as the aggressor.
And to be fair, like, both sides have suffered from severe hurt and severe injury from both sides, and both of them have, I think, valid reasons to be terribly frustrated with the other party.
Well, imagine being someone who's in it too. Like, you're explaining people that are going to work and stuff. That there's people that have to survive and live there, regardless. Like I said, like regardless of which side you pick. Imagine if civil war broke out here and we're not involved in it, but it's going on around us. We just have to survive.
Right.
Like that's for me. That's the part that I'm like trying to even like grasp a tiny little bit of what life would be like.
Right.
I think it's both, like, that someone could shoot a rocket in the town you're in, but on the other side of town, blow up something, and you wouldn't feel it, you wouldn't hear it, you wouldn't even, you know what I mean? Like, but for real. Or if something was happening in Salem versus Portland.
Right.
You could be standing in one of those cities and be like, you can't feel it, you can't see it, you don't notice the effects of it, but someone could tell you that it's happening. So it's not like I was walking to the school that I taught at and there was like conflict in my, all around me. Mm-hmm. It was very much like any place.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
That's a good point.
It's when you went to the checkpoints, the borders.
You're like,
I was there when some conflict was happening. Actually, I remember at the time Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, and she immediately flew to make sure. It was basically like we didn't know if a war was going to start, and we would have to leave, or if it was, and it quieted down, but it was scary for a moment. But for me, nothing was seen, was heard, was felt different. It's just sort of like you just live.
Wow.
So some people think that bombs are always going off if you live in Palestine, but it's like anywhere else.
But we don't even have to. I mean, we kind of have to worry about it, but not
sensationalized,
in the same way,
Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying.
What do you guys think? Do you think a solution for this problem? How do you think the Palestinians would receive the idea of if the Israeli state just said, okay, great, we now own this territory of the West Bank, we now own this territory of Gaza, you guys now have full citizenship as Israelis. Welcome. You are full citizens. Where you're at, you own the land that you're in. But now you're under the jurisdiction, as you already are, kind of in a way. But you're now full Israeli citizens.
You have rights.
You have privileges.
You're not a second-class citizen. You're not being occupied. Told what to do.
All your kids have to be in the military.
You can choose, and they could give them an option. They could say you can choose to stay and become and given all the rights and privileges of Israel people, or you can leave. And you choose. Would that be received?
I don't know. Right. I don't know what would happen if they did that tomorrow. I think a lot of I couldn't tell what would happen. That's a very big. But I will know that there are cities that are completely Arab, completely Palestinian. Well, I guess we should say completely Arab that are Israel citizenship. Nasra or
really?
Where Nazareth is.
I didn't know that.
It's an Arab town.
Yeah.
It just is part of Israel. They all have Israeli citizenship. They have Israeli rights. They have an Israeli passport.
Interesting.
And they definitely live
a better quality of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So when you were there in the West Bank, did it seem like the people that you had interactions with, they had animosity towards the Israeli government?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, of course, because it's I have animosity for our president, and he actually has a very little effect on my life right now. I mean, he could, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He's not affecting where I go tomorrow if I can get on a plane and fly where I want to. Not yet, anyway.
That's true.
Yeah, there is definitely animosity. I mean, they're occupying. You're a second-class citizen. You don't have freedom. You have to be.
Wow.
You're raised in. You're growing up in a society filled with fear that totally affects who you become and your psychology and your
Yeah.
So absolutely, they have a word istashid, which means killed by Israel, or and so they would tell stories about people, and there's almost like it's almost like martyr. They have a special word for it because it's happened so much and so frequently, and almost everybody is affected by that.
Yeah, the concept of just being, like you were talking about, Jordan, kind of everyday life, but the concept of being born into a country that is being occupied by another country and having severe rights withheld from me. I don't see how you could not build animosity towards that country. Like how and that very fact basically prevents and inhibits you from having reconciliation with that country.
Right.
Like so there's no peace unless either full rights and privileges are given as Palestinian people to their own sovereign nation, or whether Israel basically takes over Palestinian country and then says you're full Israeli citizens now. Those seems like the only two ways to make that eventually squash.
And that's wishful thinking. I will say it doesn't make me happy to say it, but after having lived there, I got a lot of questions like, well, what can happen to make the conflict what needs to happen to solve the crisis? And like my honest answer is like, it's too late. I think it's over. I think it's not going to end well. It's going to end not well for people.
Yeah.
And that will eventually expand to people on both sides, right? Because it's just whatever. And that's a sad truth. Now, I think there's some things that could improve the situation for sure. Something like giving them more rights, or giving them an actual, like pulling out completely out of the West Bank. But that's almost impossible because of the settlements that they've done. I will tell you, they have to, like, for me, it was like, if they stop building and left it as it is, could do a lot. That could do a lot. Because, I think about like after the second Intifada, where people were like, we're going to fight to get our land back. The messaging was, guys, peace, drop your arms, drop your weapons, be peaceful with Israel. Let's coexist with them, because they in turn will be good to us. So people my age, and younger, and the young men, because that's all I interacted with, they grew up being told that if they behave, Israel's going to cooperate and treat them well. The reality is they behaved, right? There are people who are throwing stones, are finding missiles, shooting it. That's happening, but they're not rising up as a population. They're behaving, right? And yet it's been 10, 20 more years of settlement building. So you can see, like you were saying, Curtis, how you might be a very frustrated young man.
Yeah.
And growing up being told that one thing, seeing that it's not happening, that Israel just continues to take land, continues to make life hard for everybody. And so when someone comes along and says, hey, listen, maybe we can make a bigger effect, you might actually listen to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if that means strapping something to yourself and blowing yourself up.
That's where
that's a harsh reality.
Yeah, it's a harsh, but it is reality though, man.
I mean, those people that got them to do it are definitely manipulating them and using the situation to use them as a sort of a pawn in their game. But I understand how people said yes. Hey, by the way, we're going to take care of your family, and there's religious benefit, and also like look at what. If you think like, hey, maybe I can help make the situation better for my family, and the other people could grow up and, anyway, I get it.
Yeah. And if you feel like you don't have anything to live for, then it's like you're given a purpose. If you feel like you have nothing to live for, your incentive then is to fight. Your incentive is to fight for something to live for. And so that's where the Palestinian perspective
wants to be a doctor, honestly, it may be impossible for him to ever reach that dream. So he's stuck. Plus, he can't go anywhere. He can't do anything. And all these lies grow up and boom, 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 boom. To resort to violence, or to think that violence might actually help because nothing else has, is not. That does not surprise me.
Right.
By any means, it happens all over the place. It's not just Israel, Palestine.
Right.
People in desperate situations are manipulated to go to violence. I don't think it takes much.
Well, I think we're gonna switch gears a little bit
with that.
Obviously, on that note, obviously, Simon, that's so valuable. I feel like that input, hearing is from someone that's had experience and real life interactions in the West Bank, which is something that seems very, 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 very uncommon in our Western United States region. Like, it's not many people have actually experienced that life. So
as sad as it is, it's fascinating to hear. It's cool to hear your perspective.
Yeah, but dude, another kind of bummer thing that happened recently. Talk a little bit of a little France situation here. I actually was at this church a few years ago, and this church just went up in smokes, man. You hear about this? Little Notre Dame, little hunchback church.
Gosh, let's be provocative. I'm not that sad. Not that sad. Wait, hold on. How many people died?
Oh, I don't think anybody died. I just from the.
And how much money was raised overnight to help to alleviate
the
situation?
I know.
Now, how many people died this morning, and how much money is going to be raised tonight? Let's look at that. Like, I'm sorry, it's historical landmark, but boy, bye.
Good.
Spend that $600 million on something that matters.
Good point.
There's been a lot of conspiracy things going around because
there, man.
I'm serious.
No, you're right.
One died.
You're right.
Okay.
You're right. You're right. Yeah. No, you called it out, man. You called it like that. I just feel like the nostalgic.
Anything like apostles were taken off too, like a week or two prior.
All right, but they were concrete, so they probably wouldn't have burned.
They come down for like polishing, so it was a god.
Yeah, but I think anytime, like if the Mona Lisa was destroyed, I'd be like, oh, dude, that sucks. Like that was like a cool thing. Like it was a cool artistic thing.
But it wasn't destroyed. Also, some of it burned down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like.
That is kind of a crazy thing, but it was cool because Jordan was talking about they had made this. What was it?
Someone a few years ago, 4 years ago, they digitally scanned the whole thing, like with lasers. So they had like every single inch mapped.
Can you show it? Can you pull it up?
I have this picture here. Look at this. Of
that's the outside though.
Yeah, but they have inside too.
Oh, okay.
That's just like the main picture. But they lasered everything.
Lasers. So basically that allows them, if they wanted to remodel it or get it all back in
because regardless of what, you're right, it's not as important as people.
Yeah.
But it's significant for sure. And
it's a piece of history.
Right. But that's a hard shift that we made, going from people dying hard lives.
I think that's part of why I reacted, because to me it's like, really? if we're going to raise $600 million overnight, billionaires of the world, wow, what could we do with that? What could we really do?
Right.
If the Mona Lisa burned down, I mean, it would be a tragedy. It'd be tragic. But
it's not a human.
It exists.
But isn't it interesting the concept of how tragedy how the concept of tragedy towards an artistic or a cultural event can raise more financial support and more emotional support and more people coming together than sometimes a tragedy towards a population, especially a population of underprivileged or indigent people.
Well, it's also the way that
there's also so much.
That's so terrible.
Sorry.
There's so much so much that's not altruistic about it as well. Right, like you're going to get the benefit of being one of the billionaires that built Notre Dame. Like your name's going on something. Plus.
Right, that's a good point.
It's also a finite thing, right? Like I can pay money to make the cathedral get rebuilt, and someday I can go and see it rebuilt and be like, my money did that. And I don't think when it comes to the world's issues,
that's a good point. That's a good point.
When it comes to world's issues, Israel, Palestine, Sri Lanka, it feels maybe a little bit never-ending, a little bit hopeless, a little bit like giving money to that isn't actually going to do anything. And there's certainly not that much kickback, because if you walk around being like, I gave money to the Sri Lanka crisis, people aren't going to like you.
Right.
But if you walk around, if you have a plaque with your name on it, you know what I mean? You're not getting a plaque for donating money to the Red Cross. No one's no one's tooting your horn. You might get a certificate. I don't know.
You get a lot of text messages. That's what you get.
Yeah,
like,
asking for more money.
Or emails.
Like, or blood. We're low on blood, guys. Can you please come give us more blood? Come on, come back again. I know we did it last week, but.
Yeah,
Curtis and Jordan, I was thinking too, also, I don't know how much time we have and all that, but I would, we talked about the conflict. If we get a chance, I'd like to just talk about the people as well. And I think I have an important reason for that. But if that's a good time now, I could, or we could do it later.
You go, man.
Go for it, dude.
Go for it. Okay, I just didn't
I want to hear about the people. Yeah.
Yeah, you're our guest, and here you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, the reason why I wanted to talk about it is because we were mentioning like what do we have to do to fix this, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of political things that could happen that would help fix it. But I think one of people over there, but on both sides of the wall, are just like us, right? They need to work. They go to work. They have a family. And when you meet someone on the opposite side of a conflict, I think that's what's one of the really important things, because it humanizes that person and their experience. And it humanizes also what you are against in them, right? So we may have beliefs that that Islam is a violent religion, that Muslims are prone to violence, whatever, that all terrorists are Muslim, We have these, we might have a fear of a Muslim built up within ourselves. And then but to meet one, to realize, to see for your own eyes that they are a person and all this stuff, I think that changes that. It's much harder to dehumanize them, to hate what they stand for, to be violent toward them, etc. And so I think that's really the most important thing. It's just the people meeting. And I had mentioned to you that this camp that runs in Maine called Seeds of Peace, and it's a pretty big deal. But this is one of the many kind of organizations around the world that bring people together from opposite sides of the conflict to send them home to be leaders, to affect change and affect peace. And I do think that that's kind of like one of the big important things. So funny, walls are preventing that from happening. But the Palestinian people are beautiful, beautiful people. I mean, if you've ever heard about Arab hospitality, it exceeds your expectations. They are so caring and open. They will drop whatever they're doing for someone in need. I was an obvious alien to their city, and one of very few Westerners who live with them. Westerners come through as a tour on tours, plenty, but to actually live in that city.
Yeah.
And so the city opened its arms to me. I was never wanting. I mean, it could be actually sometimes frustrating because I just wanted like alone time, and I couldn't. It was hard to not get pulled into somebody's living room where they will just wine and dine you, and just drink, eat, have. And part of it was, I think, fun for them to have the Westerner over but it shows you that that's what they value in their culture, right? That, oh my gosh, there's this person here from the United States who's teaching English. We have to have him over. We have to feed him. We have to give him water. We have to make sure he's clothed and all of that. And that's really quite a beautiful thing. As an American, I feel always responsible to reciprocate kindness. We feel it's a give and take like that.
Yeah.
And it was very hard not to stop offering something in return, because it was actually kind of offensive or just sort of wrong in a way to do, because they weren't doing it for that reason.
Yeah.
How has that changed how you interact with people now? Like, coming back to the States and living here, has that changed how you
treat people? I've come from a very hospitable family. I come from a big family, and all of their families are big. We kind of have this, like, this is our world that we live in, and anybody can walk through our front door and join us, but we're just going to do life the way we do life. So I don't think it's changed, but it's definitely, it definitely made me, I think, I guess it has changed. This would be a change, right? Is to just think more about, like, you are capable of dropping what you're doing to help somebody.
Yeah.
I certainly don't do it to a level that they do, and it's impossible in the United States. to be that way. I mean, people could literally grab me off the street and pull me into their house like that.
Yeah, that's a crime here.
Well, and to be fair, Simon, like I have a sister that lived in the Middle East and a brother-in-law that lived in the Middle East, in Afghanistan for several years, and I think it is kind of more of a common theme that you see with the population in the Middle East, not just Palestinians, but that is
it's
common.
Sort of an Arab thing, yeah.
Yeah, kind of an Arab thing to be extremely hospitable to outside guests, and even
a cultural.
Yeah, exactly, and not only to the point of being hospitable, but to being protective, and saying, you're in our home, you're in our area, and we're going to provide you with protection.
Oh, I'll tell you that for sure. I have a whole I was invited into a family. I have a name, an Arab name. I lived in this apartment, so because family is so important to, and I'll just talk about the Palestinians. Family is just key in this culture, in this society. Father has a house, son gets married and lives the floor above him, and then they always leave room to grow. The next son maybe adds a third floor and a fourth floor. If it gets too high and there's another son, they will build a structure adjacent to it. And so families sort of expand. Oh. And you could get into a taxi cab. Yeah, you could. So I could get into a taxi cab and be like, "Where are you going?" I'd be like, "Dar Himuni, home of the Haimunis." And there's a place in town where everybody knows, oh, that's where the Haimunis live. Women, of course, get married and enter into the move to the
That's such a different culture than what we have. Our
Can you imagine?
Our culture of no. You're
the parents' house.
You're weird if you live in the same city as your parents. Yeah. It's weird to live in the same city, let alone in the same.
We were more like that
development.
before, because I was talking to my grandma, and she wouldn't care to even know that I told this story now, but she was telling me about when she got married. She was 16, and her mom didn't even go to her wedding.
Oh.
The wedding got postponed because they popped two tires, and during the Depression you can only buy one tire a day, so their wedding got delayed by a day. And then once they finally actually got to the wedding, it was just them and the minister in the little tiny church in Arkansas, and then they drove home, and their honeymoon was in the loft of her mom's house.
Ew.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't even want to ask, could you define loft? What does that look like? I'm done.
No, yeah, exactly. That's pretty much the same, because they don't go on honeymoons. Read the earlier conversation. They're not going to Cabo.
Right. Yeah.
No. So they go consummate the wedding, because of course they don't have sex before marriage. Well, we won't say of course, but they go home and consummate the wedding, and it could be on floor 2 or floor 3 of the home. Yeah.
Right. So one other thing I did want to bring up.
Food is amazing. Oh, we have to say that. The food. Stop. The food.
Oh, good. Man. Were you ever did you?
What is it?
Did you ever feel concerned? Man, I'm gonna crap at my pants after this. Were you concerned this is not gonna be well cooked? This is gonna be I'm gonna get some type of giardia or something like that? Or did it seem like everything was super?
Things are fine. Yeah, everything was fine. Yeah, they're cooking on fires and little stove tops and stuff. Yeah.
Running water. Not you could drink. Did they have tap water?
Well, yes, I drank it.
He's trying to think.
I'm trying to remember. Wow, I can't. I think I drank it. Yeah,
it was a while ago.
But they also So one of the things at Palestine, they do get some infrastructure support from Israel. They're basically a developing nation, but because of being occupied by Israel, they're not really. So they have water. Okay, I remember we had tanks on the top of the house, and they would get filled by the water people.
Okay,
and then the water would come through this. Down from the
water
roof.
People.
Gotcha. And it was so all the water, a lot of the Dead Sea and the Jordan River is taken and used by Israel, desalinated, turned into drinking water, and then put back into.
So they get their water from the Dead Sea?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
A lot of their water comes from the Dead Sea,
yeah. Wow. I would think the Dead Sea, isn't it super, super, super salty? Hyper, one of the most salty. Yeah. So why wouldn't they get it more from, well, I guess the Jordan River, the West Bank? Because that wouldn't be salinated, right? It wouldn't have salt in it. I don't know.
Well, the Dead Sea is the lowest point on Earth. Isn't it? Is one of the lowest points on Earth that's not underwater?
I think so.
So it's it is. It is. And so it's actually cool when you're driving on your tour bus from Jerusalem down to the Dead Sea, you pass these painted on the rock neck that you're driving past. It'll be like sea level, and then you just keep driving down.
Oh wow.
So they tell you like where sea level is stuff. So yeah, I guess the water would be flowing from the mountains into the Sea of Galilee, as we call it, into the Jordan River to the Dead Sea.
Okay, gotcha.
Right, because it doesn't come from.
It has to come from somewhere up higher.
It comes from the mountains.
I have no idea, but that's interesting. One other organization that you were in really appreciated, and I want to make sure we brought up, was Breaking the Silence.
Yeah. I think that Breaking the Silence is the best thing for people to go look at.
BreakingTheSilence.com. We'll have a link on our post too.
Yeah. It might be .org.
And can you kind of explain a little bit what that organization is about? And actually, while you do that, I need to go pee really bad, so I'll be right back real quick.
Do it.
All right. Okay. So Breaking the Silence is a group, an organization made up of, or it has testimonies and people speak who were former Israeli officers, and they speak and they share stories about their time in the armed services, because everybody has to participate. All citizens participate in the Israeli defense force. IDF. Those get stationed and to the airport or borders and things like that. Anyway, they did their time, and then they're speaking out against and telling stories that kind of highlight what the IDF really is doing, what they're being told to do, and it exposes that whole. It kind of opened up that whole narrative that these are good people, that they're only defensive group, and that they are and that Palestine is the bad guys and the on the offense. It kind of says like it's hard to dispute their testimony,
right?
And it shows that it's not black and white like that, and that's a really good thing, because it's not to say that Israel isn't wrong and Palestine completely right. We know that to be true. It's a situation that is just terrible and it's violent, etc. But it does Palestine and Israel. I think that's really important for our nation to think about, and just for people who go to church and are part of the church to think about as well.
Gotcha.
Do I keep disappearing and coming back because my internet sucks?
Yeah, your internet's kind of gone up and down. I think we caught most of what you were saying. Like, you can get the gist of it. But
right, so like when the screen disappeared and I was talking, I just like cut in and out.
Sometimes. So like sometimes your voice is fine, but the video goes away for a second.
We're working on this Skype. Simon, you're the first person that's done a Skype interview with us. So you're going into new territory, and we respect and appreciate that so much, man. Yeah. You're actually, it's for the majority of this, it's actually been really smooth.
Yeah,
it really has. So it's going good.
It's all the Easter Facebook servers.
Read the story, and just break the narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. No, we'll have a link to that. In our show notes, and anything else you want us to link to.
Yeah, definitely. Text me if you
can check out. I think Seeds of Peace is a cool thing to check out, just to see what they're doing and see where one organization that is actually bringing these people together and trying to talk and find solutions.
That's cool.
Nice. I have some shower thoughts. I don't know if you're ready for those or not, Jordan.
I don't know.
Do you have any other things you wanted to bust out tonight?
Let me look.
Okay, well, while you're doing shower thoughts, I'm tying this kufiya.
Okay, yeah, I'm excited to see how this looks.
I want to show.
This is what you wear when you live in the desert, so it's helpful to have it in Nevada.
Yeah, you are in the desert.
A kufiya, for those of you that are listening, a kufiya is what is a kufiya? Simon, explain that.
Oh, it's just it's a Arabic word, but it's this. It's basically a shawl or a scarf, and it's made popular by, what's his name? I only know his Arab name. Who ended the Intifada? I always call it, his name is Abu Omar, but because people are giving their names, that means father of Omar. What's his name? Who shook the hand of the Egyptian?
Yasser
Arafat. So Yasser Arafat.
Yasser Arafat. Okay.
Think of Yasser Arafat, and you think of that white and black scarf that he wears all the time with a black cord around it. Yeah. That's a kufiya.
Okay. Cool. So
we got there.
Simon's showing us how this is properly worn.
You'll recognize it from Your Banksy.
It sounds like a very stereotypical thing, but I wonder if Western people feel a little threatened anytime they see somebody wearing that.
I don't know. I think it's like when I see someone with an eye patch, I think, where's his ship?
So when you see when you see somebody with that, you think, what do you think?
I don't know. I
don't tell me where's their AK.
No, yeah, I want to see their AK. Like,
I think this image has absolutely been associated with like the violence and the fighting because they're covering it so you can't see well, you would wear this just to keep the sand and the wind and the heat and the sun off of your face, right? That's so it's been worn for centuries.
It's utility.
For that reason.
Yeah.
Then they just happen to be the ones also throwing rocks, but also you could cover your face so you couldn't be recognized. But there's smoke and tear gas and all that stuff, so it's keeping all that off your face. So the fact that they were wearing it wasn't because they were fighting. It was just something they already did, but we sort of associated it, I think.
Yeah, I think it's
so.
Just,
it looks
it's
like
just foreign here. Like it's like it's just not something you see super often. So when you do see it, I don't necessarily get afraid. I'm just like, oh, where'd you come from? Like,
no, not afraid, but yeah, you kind of feel that.
Lawrence of Arabia-ish.
Yeah, there you go, Lawrence. That's exactly.
Not many of us live in a desert, right? So if you're from Ohio and you see this, it's going to look weird because there's no need for it really in Ohio.
Did you wear that on the Vegas Strip to keep from getting sand in your face?
I'd be careful about it. There's too many inebriated or like drugged up.
It's true.
People, open carries are legal here. I don't.
Nevada's nuts.
No need to.
Nobody to provoke that one.
Yeah.
So what were you gonna have? You had a little clip.
I'm gonna show this
little clip.
I love this clip. Okay. I'm gonna go full screen. This is an amazing animation that just makes me laugh.
They just randomly did this.
Yeah. Oh, is it gonna
kind of like slow?
I kind of like it slow. Look at that. Like, I salute you. I am done.
And he's dead.
Wow.
It's cute.
Do you know what I love? I love that. Like, I love that someone saw that.
And
I know the imagination.
They saw the eyes on it.
Proof of imagination.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna make that into something, and then they did. Like,
they spent their actual valuable time to actually do that. I mean, who knows if it's.
I like funny things. I am not going to admit to how many times I've watched that this week. Okay, there it is again. I'll
do the same thing. When I lived when I was overseas in Palestine, and I needed just to feel a little American, I would. This is true. Okay. When I needed to feel a little American, I would watch Whitney Houston's 1985 or 86. Whitney Houston singing the national anthem before Super Bowl in a track suit. She's not even in a dress. It is no one should sing this song. We should just play this video of her singing it. I'm telling you, no one should sing it again. It will never be touched.
I would love to pull it up, but I think we'd get taken.
Amazing.
We would get taken.
We'll put a link.
Yeah, we'll put a link
in the show
notes.
No, Simon's like, we're gonna put in the we're gonna put in the show notes.
If you don't cry watching this,
you're not a human.
Look within. And do some check.
I will message you later to let you know how messed up I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so my first shower thought, ladies and gentlemen, this is a special time of the day where we're going to hit up our shower thoughts. So my first shower thought, I'm going to throw off with a little Harry Potter shower thought.
Do it.
And it's kind of an interesting one. I'm a fan of Harry Potter.
What house are you?
I would like to say I'm Gryffindor.
Because everyone would.
But I think there's a lot of people that probably say I'm Slytherin.
Not.
A lot of people would probably say I'm Slytherin.
I would say you're Slytherin.
If I walked up and got Gryffindor, I would take the hat and be like, I don't think so. Try it.
Yeah, I think most people would say I'm Slytherin, probably.
I think you're Slytherin too. I'm Slytherin, and I'm proud.
Yeah, there you go. You're not afraid. I'm not afraid. You have a Slytherin sweatshirt? That's hilarious.
He's getting it.
He's getting it.
No, it's too far away, but I'll get you something else.
Uh-oh.
There we go. That's hilarious. Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Oh, look at that.
Smooth. I like it. So the first Harry Potter or shower thought is wizards in Harry Potter universe can do almost anything and everything except correct their vision.
Oh.
Like every single wizard has like these
glasses,
old school glasses
that are like.
Dude, you know what I'd say to that? If that's not proof
and Harry Potter
creation, I don't know what is.
I mean, Harry Potter has glasses. They're all just like, dude, you can do all these things, but you can't fix your vision.
It's too complicated for magic.
I guess
God is so incredible.
Silly. What do you got, Joe? What's yours?
Okay, so this is my own shower thought.
Okay.
And if it sucks, I'm cool with that. Like,
we'll have a good guffaw.
Yeah, it would be totally fine. You guys would just tell me like, don't do that again. It's weird that we call things that are bad subpar, because that would mean you're doing well.
You know what?
Wait, I have to think about that
before. I think that's a great shower thought.
Yeah,
it's like if
explain that to me.
If I do under par, I'm doing better.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're doing good.
It's like, that's subpar. Like, thank you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Exactly.
Subpar job, man.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Great point.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a really good one. I like that. So teenagers, we all know, have that stereotype of driving really fast, and elderly people have the stereotype of going really slow. But teenagers drive like they have no time in the world, and elderly drive like they have all the time in the world. But really, neither of them are like, they're both the opposite. So it's kind of funny. Like, dude, you don't got much time left, bro. You better get going, man.
Right.
Okay, Jordan.
The phrase "you only live once" applies to both living dangerously and living cautiously.
Yeah,
that's true.
Good one. Yeah, I like that. That's true. Yeah.
It's also funny how long it takes for me to think about that.
I know.
And actually,
you don't ever use it that way. You're like,
right.
Oh wait, that is messed up.
Yeah.
I guess it took me a moment, because I like using YOLO to not as living dangerously or cautiously, but living excitingly or boring.
Right.
So
that's a good point.
It's like, should I buy this? It looks so good, but it's kind of expensive. Like, YOLO, buy it. Okay, if you want to buy it, can you afford it? Buy it.
You never think of it like you're about to jump out of an airplane. We're like, YOLO, I'm staying in the plane.
I know that there's a man strapped to me who knows how to work his way around a couple of parachutes.
So
I'm jumping.
So would I.
So Wolverine.
Great.
This one you guys might have heard, but Wolverine. As an organ donor, would have saved way more lives than is just an X-Men.
I love it.
It's true. Think about it. He's very selfish to not donate a liver,
also,
to not donate a kidney. He'll just grow it right back.
Yeah,
dude, that guy could have saved countless lives.
I was going to say, if someone took his liver, would he grow it back?
But listen, how do you know he didn't? Just because it wasn't in the comic, it makes for a pretty boring comic book to be like, oh, there he is getting surgery, getting that kidney removed.
At the end of every comic book, he should have been like, well, okay, guys, have a good day. I got to go get my liver. Like, it could have been a funny thing he could have tied in at the end of every comic book. All right, guys.
His roommate would just be a surgeon. He'd come home, they cut out a kidney, and they go to bed.
Yeah.
Like, that would be,
They'd be like, you want a beer? I can't have beer tonight.
That doesn't mean it didn't happen.
That's true. That's true. I mean, of course, since it was real. So, yeah, totally. I mean,
he doesn't need a surgeon. He's got the claws. He just cut it out himself.
That's true.
Like, here you go.
That's true.
But, man, it's the pain. So we got to remember that. Can you imagine? I have gotten tattoos, and I have nearly passed out or fallen asleep out of pain, right? My body's just shutting down because it hurts so much. Like, cutting out your kidney qualifies.
Right.
I think,
that's true, because he does say that
slightly
his
higher
claws
scale.
come out hurts.
Yeah.
He does say like it's
every
pain.
Time,
yeah.
He'd have to have a lot of anesthesia.
All right, here's a new one. The most impressive thing about going to the moon was coming back.
Sure.
That they made it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
The return worked.
Well, I mean, and if you actually believe they went to the moon. But
okay.
But yeah, that is
looks like the poster behind you proves that it happened.
I know, right?
That's actually Curtis
last
weekend.
Can you imagine that? I think about that sometimes, though, being like actually
on
the person that leaves
the moon.
Space. I'm just having this aha moment where I dreamt that I went to space last night. So that's weird. And It was like powerful. Like, I got out of the atmosphere and I was like, whoa, we are not in Kansas anymore.
You did spend about 90 minutes on Skype with us looking at that picture.
Maybe it influenced my dreams.
Inception, man.
Inception, bro.
Yeah. Now that I think of it.
So, kind of on terms of video games, my last shower thought would be, if your life gets a lot harder, just think about it that you basically, it's just a good sign that you just leveled up.
I almost, I almost put that one in.
So, I mean, think about that.
If your life gets harder, it's good because you leveled up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like basically, boom, I'm just leveled up right here.
I find not having something challenging in my life being so boring.
It
like
is
so
pretty
that
boring.
like nothing like the next step. If the next step is not in the foreseeable future, I go crazy.
Yeah.
I'm going to learn to become a professional puppeteer of my body. Now I'm going to learn to be a professional bubble blower.
Bubble blower.
Who knows what's next?
Yeah, I mean,
the sky is the limit with that, man.
It's only up from here.
Literally bubbles.
Yeah.
Netflix special.
Yes, that's right. Also, Simon, congrats on your up and coming comedy tours.
Yeah.
Simon's gonna have comedy shows going.
Hopefully,
left and right coming up here.
We should go see Simon.
I actually went on a first date the other day, and I thought it went pretty well. We both arrived. We were dressed really nicely, and the conversation was good. We even made a second date. How did she put it? I'll see you in hell.
Smooth. She went really well. We won't be able to meet up for a little while.
Hey, let's have a second date in hell. Didn't go. I don't know what happened.
Okay, so I have two more.
Okay, two more. Hit them up.
Okay. Schools require parents' permission to show PG-13 movies that have little to no violence, but a game about hanging a man is played without consent as soon as a kid can spell.
Dude, so true. So true. So true.
I like thinking about all the violence that's in our I think
subliminal
about the stories and stuff. And
oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was like
Ring Around the Rosie.
Impressive.
We're all dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, here's my last one.
Last one.
This one was a new addition I saw this afternoon. Chefs are hardworking, talented artists. We can agree, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And we all turn their best efforts into shit.
That's how to honor it.
I love that. That's hilarious. That's so good.
But also energy. Come on.
Yeah. Energy. That's
ATP
true.
And heat,
happiness.
That's true. That's true.
But that's not as funny though.
Connections. Yeah.
No, it's just
yeah.
No, it's not as funny as all. It's a great thought.
Well,
I'm gonna turn your best effort into.
Yeah.
What if you did that with a painting? Just well, the chef liked it.
Beautiful effort. Yeah.
Taste.
The Mona Lisa tasted really good.
Really.
It was really well aged.
It's been fermenting for a long time.
Yeah.
Little salty. All right.
Oh man.
Boom. Well, that's it. Episode 13.
That time went by so quickly.
Right?
I feel like we barely said anything.
That was hour and 20.
Wow.
So, Simon Skold, thank you so much for coming on, joining us, talking about the super complicated and tricky and heavy subject, but it's amazing and super, super important to have people with perspectives from actual real life in those areas. So we really appreciate and value that, and value you, man. And dude, we'll have to have you on again, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, we can talk about more stuff.
My pleasure. Let's do it again. This was fun.
All right, peace, bro.